I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to check up on my wife. I always believed that trust was the foundation of any relationship, and once you started questioning things, the cracks would only get bigger. But sometimes, those cracks are already there, you just refuse to see them. My name's Jake. I'm 34, and I've been married to Emily for 3 years. We met after my first marriage crashed and burned. My ex-wife, Rachel, cheated on me, and after a brutal divorce, I swore I'd never let myself be in that position again. When I met Emily, she was everything Rachel wasn't: kind, supportive, and, most importantly, loyal. Or so I thought. It started small. Emily had been acting different. Not in an obvious, I'm having an affair way, but just little things that didn't sit right. She started dressing up more for work, wearing perfume I'd never smelled before, and keeping her phone close at all times. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off, saying she just wanted to feel good about herself. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But then, one morning, I woke up, and she was already up and dressed, heels, tight black dress, makeup done to perfection. She looked stunning, but also, suspicious. It was a random Wednesday. Emily never dressed like this for work. Damn, babe, I said, rubbing my eyes. What's the occasion? She smiled, but there was something forced about it. Just a work thing. You know, networking and all that. I nodded, pretending not to care. But something in my gut told me this was the beginning of the end. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that gut feeling, the one I had ignored in my first marriage, the one that had cost me my peace, my trust, and years of my life, was screaming at me now. And I wasn't about to ignore it again. That morning, after Emily left, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the door. My mind ran through all the possible explanations. Maybe she really did have a work event. Maybe she just wanted to feel sexy. Maybe I was just paranoid because of what happened with Rachel. But deep down, I knew. I got up and went to the kitchen, made myself a coffee, and tried to shake off the unease. It wasn't working. Every part of me was buzzing, like my instincts were trying to punch their way through my rationalizing. I had ignored red flags before. I had told myself, nah, she wouldn't do that to me. And I had been wrong. This time, I wasn't going to be blindsided. Emily had been glued to her phone lately, but last night, she had forgotten it in the bathroom while she was showering. I remembered seeing a preview of a message pop up, just a name, D. Nothing suspicious on its own, but when I had asked her who D was, she had given me the vaguest answer. Oh, just a coworker. We're working on a project together. That didn't sit right with me. And now, as I stood in the kitchen, my fingers drumming against my coffee mug, I realized I needed answers. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked our home security camera. I had set up a basic security system when we moved into the house, mostly for safety, but also for convenience. It had motion sensors and recorded short clips when it detected movement. I scrolled through the footage from that morning, expecting to see Emily heading straight to her car. But she didn't. Instead, she walked outside, stopped at the end of the driveway, and stood there. A few minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up. Not her car. I felt my stomach drop. The driver's door opened, and a man got out. He was tall, well-dressed, and, this part made my blood run cold, Emily walked up to him, smiling. Not just a polite smile. Not just a friendly, good morning, kind of smile. No, this was different. This was warm. Then she hugged him. And not just a quick, casual hug. She lingered. Then, just before they got into his car, she did something that made my chest tighten with pure rage. She reached up and touched her wedding ring. Slid it off. And put it in her purse. I slammed my coffee mug down on the counter so hard I almost cracked it. My hands were shaking. My whole body was tense. It felt like someone had just pulled the floor out from under me, like I was falling and had no way to stop. I should have stopped watching. I should have walked away. But I couldn't. I kept staring at the screen, at the way she looked at this man, at the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she used to do with me. At the way she reached for his hand as they got into the car. I didn't know where they were going. I didn't know who he was. But I knew one thing. This wasn't just a coworker. And Emily wasn't just networking. I sat there for what felt like forever, just staring at the screen. My hands were still gripping the counter, my jaw tight, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to break out of my chest. I had been here before. Different woman, same gut-wrenching feeling. The first time, I had ignored the signs. I had convinced myself I was imagining things, that I was insecure, that she wouldn't do this to me. I wasn't making that mistake again. I had two choices: sit here, stew in my own misery, and pretend I didn't see what I just saw, or do something about it. I chose the second. Emily had never been great with technology, and that worked in my favor. A few months back, she had asked me to install a GPS tracker on her phone so she could locate it if she ever lost it. She never bothered to turn it off. I pulled up the tracking app and waited for it to load. There she was. Not at work. Not at any kind of professional event. She was at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place we only went to on anniversaries or special occasions. The kind of place where dim lighting and expensive wine made everything feel more intimate. I clenched my fists. I could have called her right then. I could have confronted her over the phone, demanded answers, asked why. But I already knew why. Instead, I grabbed my keys, threw on a jacket, and got in my car. I needed to see it for myself. The drive to the restaurant felt like a blur. My mind was racing with every possible scenario. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew. I pulled into the parking lot, scanning for her car. It was there, parked neatly a few spaces away from the sleek black car I had seen in the footage. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and stepped out. I didn't storm in. I didn't make a scene. Instead, I walked calmly to the restaurant's outdoor seating area, which had just enough privacy for people to feel comfortable, but not enough to hide from someone who knew exactly what to look for. And then I saw them. Emily and him. Sitting close, leaning in. She was laughing, at something he said, her hand casually resting on his. She looked happy. Relaxed. Like she hadn't just kissed me goodbye this morning, like she hadn't promised me a lifetime together, like she wasn't wearing the ring I had slipped onto her finger 3 years ago. No. Wait. She wasn't wearing it. Her left hand was bare. Something inside me snapped. I didn't charge over. I didn't flip the table or throw a drink in her face. No, I pulled out my phone, raised it just enough to get a clear shot, and took the picture. Then another. And another. Because when the time came to confront her, I wanted proof. I wanted her to see what I saw. I wanted her to have no way out. I turned around, walked back to my car, and sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I felt sick. I wanted to scream. To cry. To punch something. But instead, I just sat there, staring at the photos I had just taken. This was it. There was no coming back from this. And Emily had no idea that her world was about to come crashing down. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity, gripping my phone so tightly that my fingers went numb. The photos were right there, evidence, undeniable and clear. I kept staring at them, as if maybe, just maybe, I'd find some way to explain this away. But there was nothing to explain. She was cheating. Right in front of me. I thought I'd feel rage. I thought I'd feel the kind of uncontrollable fury that made people do stupid things. But instead, all I felt was cold. Numb. I watched them for a few more minutes from my car. She leaned in when he spoke. She touched his arm. She laughed at his jokes, the same way she used to laugh at mine. And when their food arrived, she looked at him with this glow, this softness that made my stomach turn. I could have walked in right then. I could have confronted her in front of everyone, made a scene, watched the color drain from her face when she realized she was caught. But that would have been too easy. No. I wanted her to dig her own grave. So I left. The drive home was eerily quiet. No music, no thoughts, just the sound of my own breathing in the distant hum of traffic. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to accuse her outright. Not yet. I wanted to see if she'd lie to my face. I wanted to give her the chance to tell me the truth, to admit what she had done. And when she didn't, I'd show her the proof. I walked into the house and forced myself to act normal. I sat on the couch, checked my phone, flipped through the channels like it was just another evening. An hour passed. Then 2. And then I heard the garage door open. Emily was home. She walked in with that same sweet smile she always had after work, like nothing had happened. Her heels clicked against the tile, her perfume filled the air, and she casually set her purse down on the counter. "Hey, babe," she said, walking over and leaning down to kiss me. I turned my head at the last second. She hesitated but didn't say anything. Instead, she kicked off her heels and flopped onto the couch next to me. "Long day," she sighed, stretching her legs across my lap like she always did. Work was exhausting. Work. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. "Yeah?" I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "Anything interesting happen?" She shrugged. "Not really. Just the usual meetings, a bunch of emails, and then I stopped by the gym before heading home." I nodded slowly. "The gym, huh?" She said, scrolling through her phone like she wasn't sitting here lying to my face. I felt my hands clench. This was it. The moment of truth. "Funny," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Because I could have sworn I saw you at La Bella Vita instead." Her entire body stiffened. For a split second, she didn't move. Didn't blink. Just sat there, frozen. Then, she let out a breathy, nervous laugh. "Wait, what?" I didn't say anything. I just pulled up one of the photos and turned my phone toward her. Emily's face drained of color. She stared at the screen like she had just seen a ghost. That's not what it looks like," she stammered. "Oh." I said, my voice calm. Too calm. "Because it looks like you were out with another man, touching him, laughing with him, and, oh, yeah, not wearing your wedding ring." She opened her mouth, then shut it. Her hands were shaking now. I waited. I wanted to hear what kind of excuse she'd come up with. What pathetic lie she'd try to spin. "Jake," she finally whispered. "I can explain." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Go ahead." And just like that, the walls she had so carefully built started to crumble. Emily opened her mouth, then shut it again. She looked at me, then at my phone, as if willing the picture to disappear. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, her breathing shallow. I could see it, the panic setting in, the realization that she had been caught, and that no amount of charm or sweet words would get her out of this. But still, she tried. "Jake, it's not what you think," she whispered, forcing a small, shaky laugh. "I swear, I was just meeting up with a friend." It wasn't. A friend, I repeated, my voice cold. A friend you didn't bother to mention. A friend you touched like that. A friend you took off your wedding ring for. Her eyes darted away, her jaw tightening. I took my ring off because I didn't want to lose it, she blurted out. You know how it gets loose sometimes when I wash my hands, and I didn't want it to fall off. Bullshit. She flinched. I never raised my voice with Emily. Even in arguments, I kept my composure. But right now, I was done playing nice. I leaned forward, leveling her with a stare. Try again. She swallowed hard, her fingers twisting together. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Emily. I saw you. I saw how you looked at him. I saw the way you leaned into him. I saw how you touched his hand. I unlocked my phone and swiped through the pictures, holding the screen up to her face. This isn't nothing. This isn't just a friend. So stop lying to me. She stared at the photos, her breathing uneven. I could see her brain working, trying to find an escape, some way to twist the story into something less damning. And then, just like that, her expression changed. The panic was still there, but now there was something else. Defensiveness. You were spying on me, she snapped suddenly, sitting up straighter. You tracked me. I scoffed. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy. You lied to me. You snuck around behind my back. You took off your wedding ring to meet another man, and I'm the problem. I didn't sneak around, she shot back, her voice rising. I was going to tell you eventually. Oh, really? I tilted my head. And when exactly were you planning on telling me? Before or after you slept with him? Her mouth dropped open, and for a second, she looked offended. Like I was the one being unreasonable. That's not fair, she whispered. I let out a humorless laugh. Fair? I repeated. You know what's not fair? Watching my wife lie to my face after I already caught her red-handed. You want to play the victim here? Go ahead. But I'm done listening to your bullshit. Her eyes welled up with tears, and for a second, I saw a flicker of something, guilt, maybe. Regret. Or just fear that she was losing control of the situation. Then, she did what cheaters always do when they run out of excuses. She turned it back on me. If you trusted me, she hissed, you wouldn't have gone through my location in the first place. You wanted to catch me doing something bad, didn't you? You were just waiting for an excuse to accuse me of something. I stared at her in disbelief. Wow, I said, shaking my head. You're really going to pull that card? She sniffed, crossing her arms. Maybe if you weren't so paranoid, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. You know what? You're right, Emily. Her eyes widened slightly, like she thought I was about to back down. But I wasn't. I should have never trusted you. Her lip trembled. Jake, please, just. No, I stood up, shoving my phone into my pocket. I'm done talking. You had your chance to be honest with me, and you still chose to lie. I hope whatever you had with him was worth it. Because you just threw away everything we had. She blinked rapidly, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. It wasn't like that, she pleaded. It was just. I was confused, and I missed. I held up a hand. Save it. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her sitting there, crying on the couch. I had heard enough. I knew what I had to do next. I didn't go far. I just needed to get out of that room, to get away from her lies, from the sickening weight of betrayal that was pressing down on my chest like a heavy stone. I walked into the kitchen, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. My mind was racing, my heart pounding, but beneath all of that, something had shifted. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't even angry. I was just done. I heard Emily get up from the couch. A few seconds later, she was standing in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself, her face red and tear-streaked. "Jake," she said softly. "Please, just talk to me." I exhaled slowly, turning to face her. "Talk to you?" I repeated. "I did talk to you, Emily. I gave you every opportunity to tell me the truth. And instead of owning up to it, you lied to my face. Multiple times." She flinched but didn't say anything. I shook my head. "So tell me, what exactly do you want me to say right now?" Her hands tightened around her arms. She hesitated, looking down at the floor before meeting my gaze again. "I never meant for it to happen." I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "That's what you're going with?" "I never meant for it to happen." I rubbed a hand down my face. "Jesus, Emily. It's true," she whispered. "I didn't plan this, I swear. I was just feeling disconnected from us, and when I ran into Daniel." "Daniel." I said his name flatly, rolling it over my tongue like something foul. "So that's his name." She nodded, swallowing hard. "We used to date, years ago. Before you and I met." I clenched my jaw. "Right. And when you ran into him, what? You just forgot you were married?" She wiped at her face, stepping forward like she wanted to reach for me, but I took a step back. Her lip trembled. "It wasn't like that. It just started with talking. Catching up. And then," she hesitated, wringing her hands. "I don't know. I got caught up in it. It felt easy. Like before things got complicated with us." I stared at her in disbelief. "Complicated?" My voice was cold, flat. "We have a house together. A life together. And instead of talking to me about whatever was wrong, you ran back to your ex." "I wasn't thinking," she whispered. "I made a mistake." "No," I said. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is buying the wrong kind of coffee. You made a choice, Emily." I took a step closer, leveling her with a hard stare. "Every text. Every phone call. Every time you met up with him. Every time you took your ring off. You chose this." She let out a choked sob. "I don't want to lose you." I exhaled, shaking my head. "You already did." Her breath hitched, her whole body trembling now. "Jake, please," she whispered. I'll cut him off. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." I studied her for a long moment. I wasn't buying it. She wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry she got caught. And there was nothing left to say. "I'll be staying somewhere else tonight," I said finally. "Don't bother calling me." She took a step forward, panic flashing across her face. "Wait, where are you?" "I don't owe you an explanation," I cut in. "Not anymore." And with that, I grabbed my keys, walked past her, and left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just walked away. Because as far as I was concerned, this marriage was already over. The second I stepped out of the house, the cold night air hit me like a slap to the face. It felt sobering. Grounding. Like the universe was reminding me that this moment was real, that everything I had just witnessed, everything I had just heard, was actually happening. I climbed into my car and sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. I could still hear Emily's voice in my head, that desperate, trembling, "I don't want to lose you." Too late. I took a deep breath, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway. As I drove away, I half expected to see her running after me, begging me to stay, swearing she'd change, promising me the world. But she didn't. And that told me everything I needed to know. I had no plan. Nowhere to go. I could have gone to a friend's place, but the thought of explaining everything, of reliving the past few hours out loud, made me feel sick. I ended up in a parking lot outside of some random 24-hour diner, staring blankly at the neon sign flickering above the entrance. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I didn't need to look at it to know who it was. Emily. I ignored it. Instead, I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, exhaling slowly. The numbness was starting to wear off, and the weight of it all was sinking in. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, the woman I had trusted despite my past, the woman who had promised me forever, had betrayed me. And worse. She had lied about it, over and over, even when there was no way out. It was Rachel all over again. No. I clenched my jaw. It was worse. Because this time, I had believed I was safe. I had let my guard down. And look where that got me. My phone buzzed again. This time, I looked. Emily. Please come home. Please let's talk. Please don't do this. I love you. I stared at the message for a long time. The words should have meant something. They should have stirred something in me. They didn't. Because love wasn't supposed to feel like this. I turned off my phone, tossed it onto the passenger seat, and leaned back against my seat, staring at the ceiling. I knew what I had to do next. Tomorrow, I was filing for divorce. Emily had already made her choice. Now, it was my turn. I barely slept that night. I ended up checking into a cheap motel, the kind where the air smelled faintly of cigarettes and regret, and the hum of the vending machines outside the door was the only sound keeping me company. I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, my mind looping over everything, Emily's lies, the way she looked at him, the way she tried to turn it back on me. At some point, exhaustion took over, but it wasn't restful sleep. It was the kind where you close your eyes, and the second you open them, it feels like no time has passed at all. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a hollow kind of clarity. This was over. There was no fixing this. And now, I had to deal with the aftermath. I showered, threw on the same clothes from the night before, and checked my phone. 13 missed calls. 7 messages. All from Emily. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. I already knew what they said. Some combination of, "I'm sorry, please come home," and, "we can work through this." No, we couldn't. I opened my laptop and searched for a divorce lawyer. Not just any lawyer. A damn good one. I wasn't going to drag this out. I wasn't going to let her cry her way back into my life with empty promises and temporary regret. I had wasted too much time on believing people could change. I booked a consultation for later that day. Then, and only then, did I finally text Emily back. We're done. I'll be home later to get my things. Don't be there. She read it immediately. The little, typing, bubble appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, she sent. "Emily, please, Jake. Just talk to me." I turned off my phone. What was there left to say? A few hours later, I pulled into the driveway. My stomach clenched as I saw Emily's car still there. Of course, she hadn't listened. I sighed, running a hand down my face before stepping out of the car. I wasn't in the mood for another fight. I just wanted to grab my stuff and go. The second I walked through the front door, she was there. Sitting on the couch, hands clenched in her lap, eyes swollen and red. She must have been crying all night. Good. She should be crying. I didn't say anything as I walked past her and headed straight to the bedroom. "Jake, please," she whispered. I ignored her. I grabbed my suitcase from the closet and started packing. Clothes. Shoes. The essentials. I didn't need much. I just needed out. She stood in the doorway, watching me. "You're really doing this?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I zipped up the suitcase. "What did you think was going to happen, Emily?" She shook her head, stepping closer. "I don't know. I just thought maybe you'd give me a chance to explain." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Explain what, exactly?" "That you didn't mean to cheat. That it just happened. That you still love me." I scoffed, shaking my head. "Save it." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "It wasn't serious," she choked out. "It was just a stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything." I turned to face her fully, my expression unreadable. "It meant something to me." She looked away, biting her lip, but I wasn't done. "You say it wasn't serious? That it didn't mean anything? Then why did you take off your wedding ring?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. She flinched like I had slapped her. I nodded. "Yeah. That's what I thought." Silence stretched between us. Finally, she whispered, "Is there really no way to fix this?" I slung my backpack over my shoulder and grabbed the suitcase. Then I looked her in the eyes, delivering the final nail in the coffin. "No, Emily. There isn't." And then, without another word, I walked out the door. And this time, I wasn't coming back. Walking out of that house should have felt liberating. It should have felt like a weight lifting off my chest, like I could finally breathe again. But as I threw my suitcase into the trunk and climbed into my car, all I felt was exhaustion. Not sadness. Not regret. Just the kind of deep, soul-crushing exhaustion that settles into your bones when you finally had enough. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the front door. Part of me expected her to come running after me, to make one last desperate attempt to stop me. She didn't. Good. Because if she had, I might have said things I couldn't take back. I took a deep breath, started the car, and drove away. I didn't know where I was going at first. I had booked a consultation with a divorce lawyer for later that afternoon, but until then, I had nothing but time and nowhere to be. I stopped at a gas station, filled up my tank, grabbed a coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard, and just sat there, scrolling through my phone. My notifications were flooded. More texts from Emily. A missed call from her mom, great, she was already trying to drag her family into this, and a couple of messages from mutual friends. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I pulled up the divorce lawyer's website, double-checked my appointment time, and started making a list of everything I needed to get in order. Bank accounts. Joint assets. The house. I wasn't going to let this get messy. I wasn't going to let her drag this out. She had made her choice. Now, I was making mine. After sitting there for about half an hour, I realized something. I wasn't sad. I wasn't sitting there questioning if I was making the right decision, or if maybe I should hear her out, or if I could somehow forgive her. That told me everything I needed to know. When I had gone through this with Rachel, my first wife, I had been devastated. I had begged for answers. I had spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done wrong, what I could have done differently. This time, I didn't care. I had nothing left for Emily. No love, no anger, no hope for reconciliation. Just nothing. And that, I think, was the saddest part of all. As I was about to toss my phone onto the passenger seat, another text from Emily popped up. "Emily, I know I don't deserve anything from you right now, but please, can we talk? One last time." I stared at it for a long moment. Then, without a second thought, I locked my phone, set it face down, and drove away. Some things just weren't worth reopening. And this? This was one of them. I walked into the lawyer's office that afternoon feeling like a shell of myself. The receptionist greeted me with a polite, professional smile, but I could tell she had seen this 1,000 times before, the dead eyes, the stiff posture, the look of a man who had been blindsided by betrayal. "Take a seat. Mr. Lawson will be with you shortly," she said, gesturing toward the waiting area. I sat down, running a hand through my hair, my mind still replaying everything from the past 24 hours. It didn't feel real. Less than a day ago, I was just living my life, believing I had a happy marriage, trusting my wife. And now? Now I was about to start the legal process of ending everything we had built together. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man with graying hair and sharp eyes stepped out of his office. "Jake?" I stood up. "Yeah." He shook my hand firmly and motioned for me to follow him inside. His office was neat, lined with bookshelves filled with legal guides, framed certificates on the wall, exactly what you'd expect from a seasoned divorce attorney. "Let's get right into it," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Tell me what's going on." I took a deep breath and laid it all out. "Emily. The affair. The lies. The fact that I was done and wanted this handled quickly." Lawson nodded, taking notes as I spoke. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "This is straightforward," he said. "No kids, no major debts, and from what you've told me, you want a clean break. The house, do you want to fight for it?" I exhaled sharply, thinking about it. The house was ours, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a place filled with broken promises. "No," I said finally. "She can have it." He nodded. "That makes things easier. Are you expecting any resistance from her?" I let out a humorless laugh. "She's been texting, trying to talk. But at this point, I don't care what she wants. I just want out." Lawson studied me for a second, then nodded again. "Good. That means you won't let emotions drag this out. The fastest way to do this is an uncontested divorce, no fighting, no long court battles. We file, she signs, and in a few months, you're legally free. That's all I wanted. Freedom. Let's do it," I said. By the time I walked out of the lawyer's office, I felt lighter. Not better, not yet, but at least I had a plan. Emily was going to get the divorce papers soon, and once she did, there was no turning back. I knew she'd call. I knew she'd cry. I knew she'd beg. But none of it mattered anymore. I had already left. Now, I was making sure there was nothing to go back to. 2 days passed before Emily got the divorce papers. I knew the exact moment she saw them because my phone started blowing up, calls, texts, voicemails. At first, I ignored them. I was done listening to her lies, her excuses, her last-ditch efforts to manipulate me into staying. But after the 5th call in a row, I finally picked up. The second I answered, I was met with silence. Not crying, not yelling, just silence. Then, a quiet, broken, "You really did it." I took a slow breath, keeping my voice calm. "Yeah, Emily. I did." She sniffed, exhaling shakily. "So that's it? You won't even talk to me? Just a lawyer and some papers, like I meant nothing to you?" I clenched my jaw. "You did mean something to me. That's the problem." A choked sob came through the phone. "Jake, please, can we just—" "No," my voice was firm. "We can't. It's done, Emily." She went quiet again, and for a moment, I thought she had hung up. But then, barely above a whisper, she asked, "Did I ever have a chance?" I sighed, rubbing my temple. "You had so many chances, Emily. The second you started texting him. The second you decided to meet up. The second you took off your ring." She let out a soft, shaky breath. I wasn't thinking. You were thinking, I corrected. You were thinking about yourself. About how it made you feel. You just weren't thinking about me. More silence. Then, her voice broke. I don't know what to do without you. I closed my eyes, pressing my fingers against the bridge of my nose. You should have thought about that before you threw away our marriage. She let out a sob, one of those real, guttural ones that make your chest tighten if you still care about the person. But I didn't. Not anymore. I inhaled sharply. Sign the papers, Emily. She gasped softly, like the final nail had been driven into the coffin. And if I don't? I exhaled. Then we drag this out in court, and you lose even more. Either way, I'm not staying. So what's it gonna be? There was a long pause, and then, finally, so quiet I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, okay. I nodded to myself. Goodbye, Emily. And before she could say another word, I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt free. The moment I hung up, I just sat there, staring at my phone, waiting for the weight of it all to hit me. But it never did. I had expected some kind of emotional collapse, some gut-wrenching grief that would leave me questioning if I had done the right thing. But instead, all I felt was relief. No more lies. No more second-guessing myself. No more wondering if the woman I loved was hiding something behind her smile. I was free. And Emily? She was just another chapter one had finally closed. Over the next few days, I stayed busy. I moved my things into a temporary apartment, set up a separate bank account, and finalized the last details with my lawyer. Emily had agreed to sign the divorce papers, probably because she knew she had no choice, and within a few months, everything would be legally over. I had no plans of ever seeing her again. But before I could fully walk away, there was one last thing I needed to do. I had to go back to the house. Not to talk. Not to reminisce. Just to take back what was mine. I showed up when I knew she'd be at work. The key still worked, and as I stepped inside, I took one last look around. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. A place where something had died. I moved quickly, grabbing the last of my things, some old books, a few personal documents, my favorite hoodie that she had always stolen to sleep in. And then, as I was about to leave, I noticed something on the kitchen counter. A small box. Curious, I opened it. Inside was my wedding ring. My chest tightened for half a second. Then I exhaled, closed the box, and left it right where I found it. I didn't need it anymore. I locked the door behind me for the last time and walked to my car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, I was done living in the past. Whatever came next. It was mine to decide. And for once, I wasn't afraid of the future. The first few days after cutting Emily out of my life were strange. Not painful. Not even difficult. Just empty. There were moments when I'd reach for my phone out of habit, ready to text her something random, only to remember that there was no point. No morning messages. No, what do you want for dinner, texts. No more inside jokes. But instead of feeling sad about it, I just accepted it. This was my life now. And honestly, I liked it better this way. What surprised me most wasn't how fast I adjusted, but how other people reacted. Mutual friends started reaching out, asking if everything was true. Some were supportive, others tried the whole, maybe you guys can work it out, speech. Those people didn't stay in my life for long. Then there were the ones who already knew about Emily's affair but had said nothing. That part stung. Not because I expected people to get involved in my marriage, but because it made me wonder how long I had been the fool in the room. How many people had watched me talk about Emily, about our future, about my plans for us, knowing damn well she was seeing someone else behind my back, and chose to stay quiet. I cut those people out just as fast as I had cut her out. If there was one thing I had learned through all of this, it was that silence wasn't neutral. If you see someone getting betrayed and you say nothing, you're just as bad as the person doing it. Little by little, I started to feel more like me again. I hit the gym more, not to distract myself, but because I actually enjoyed it. I started picking up old hobbies, reconnecting with old friends, doing things just because I wanted to, not because I was trying to maintain a relationship that never deserved my effort in the first place. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't checking my phone constantly. I wasn't worrying about whether or not I was enough for someone. I wasn't walking on eggshells, wondering if my wife was lying to me. I was just living. And I hadn't realized how much I had missed that. One night, about a month after I left, I got one last message from Emily. It was short. "Emily, I miss you." I read it. Then I deleted it. No response. No second thoughts. No anger. Just nothing. Because that's what she had become to me. Nothing. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt truly, completely free. Deleting Emily's message felt like closing the final door between us. No anger, no regret, just a quiet, final goodbye. And that was all I needed. From that point on, I didn't think about her much. When I did, it wasn't in a way that made my chest tighten or my stomach turn. It was more like remembering an old dream, one that had felt real at the time but faded the moment I woke up. She was my past. And I was finally stepping into my future. I kept busy, but not in the way people do when they're trying to distract themselves. I started taking control of my own life again. I went out more, not to bars or anywhere I'd feel pressure to get back out there, but to places I enjoyed. I traveled for work and actually enjoyed it instead of worrying about who was texting my wife while I was gone. I focused on myself, my goals, my future. And slowly, things started falling into place. A few months later, I heard through the grapevine that Emily and Daniel, the guy she had thrown everything away for, were no longer together. Apparently, it had all fallen apart not long after our divorce papers were finalized. Someone mentioned that she had been struggling. That she wasn't doing well. That she had made a mistake. I didn't care. Her choices were her own, and now, so were the consequences. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't smug. I just didn't care. That part of my life was over, and I had no interest in reopening it. Looking back, walking away from Emily was the best thing I ever did for myself. It wasn't easy. It wasn't painless. But it was necessary. Because at the end of the day, love isn't just about words. It's not just about the good times, the happy moments, the memories. Love is about respect. And the moment she took that away, she lost me. For good. Months passed. Seasons changed. And life went on. At first, I thought there would be some big moment, some kind of realization or epiphany that would make everything click into place. But the truth is, healing doesn't work like that. It's not a straight line. It's not dramatic. It's not something you wake up one morning and just feel. It's gradual. It's choosing, every single day, to not let the past control you. And that's exactly what I did. When I look back at the man I was before this happened, the guy who trusted too easily, who ignored red flags because he wanted to believe in the best in people, I don't recognize him anymore. Not in a bad way. I just evolved. I don't waste my energy on people who don't deserve it. I don't make excuses for others' behavior. I don't hold on to things that were never meant to last. Emily wasn't just a failed marriage. She was a lesson. A painful one. A necessary one. It was bound to happen sooner or later. I was at a coffee shop one afternoon, scrolling through my phone while waiting for my order, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Jake. I knew before I even turned around. Emily. I took a breath and looked over my shoulder. She looked different. Not bad. Just different. More tired, maybe. Like life hadn't been particularly kind to her since the last time we spoke. For a brief moment, we just stared at each other. And then, she gave me a small, hesitant smile. Hey. I nodded. Hey. I expected her to dive into an apology, to try one last time to fix something that was beyond repair. But she didn't. Instead, she sighed. You look good. I did. Not just physically, but in every way that mattered. I wasn't the broken man she had left behind. I was better. Thanks, I said. You, doing okay? She hesitated, then shrugged. I'm figuring things out. I nodded. That was fair. She bit her lip, as if debating whether to say something. And then, finally, she sighed. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I know that doesn't change what happened, but I needed to say it. I studied her for a long moment. And then, to my own surprise, I nodded. I know. And that was it. No grand reconciliation. No angry words. Just two people who had once shared a life, now nothing more than strangers with history. Her order was called, and she gave me a small, sad smile before walking away. And just like that, she was gone. As I watched her leave, I didn't feel anger. Or regret. Or sadness. I just felt peace. For the first time since everything fell apart, I knew, deep down, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Life had moved on. And so had I. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that betrayal isn't just about what someone does to you. It's about what you choose to do with it. You can let it break you. Or you can let it shape you. I chose the second option. And I've never looked back.